Once on Mount Kaifeng, the main character tried to shout at the elders of the mentors. He was indignant and told them that they should take care of their students. But the old men were silent. The guy realized that this was a sign and it was time to leave. Finally, some of them did come out. Military genius Chu Yuelao asked Xiao Ming not to leave. Sage King Shuzeng comforted the girl, saying that Xiao Ming had long been ready to leave. Guanju, the fortune teller, was next to them, and Zheng Butan, the alchemist, was proud of his disciple Xiao Ming. He said that the guy had always been smart and the alchemist would like him to show all his talents and the power of Huaxia in Zaibo. 7 girls already know everything, so Xiao Ming can only follow the plan. But the elders hoped that Xiao Ming would not return. Chu Ming still believed that his mentors were genuinely worried about him. They just didn't tell him about it. Chu Ming laughed at the fact that all the mentors are over 100 years old, and they still behave like little girls. He thanked the mentors for their upbringing and care, bowing in front of the temple, and promised that he would not let his mentors down and make his dreams come true. After that, the guy left. Entering the train car, the guy noticed that he had a pretty good ticket to Jiangsu. Even a sleeping place was provided. Passing by the seats in the car, the guy noticed a brunette girl. She immediately reacted to his gaze and was indignant. The guy was not up to the girl. He only answered her that prolonged melancholy leads to clogging of channels and constant pain. So if you do not cure it at an early stage, then he warned the girl that it could turn into pathology. The girl was surprised, because yesterday at the examination, the doctors took a very long time to diagnose, and the guy immediately said everything. She didn't understand how he had identified the problem so quickly. Entering the compartment, the guy realized that it was even better than his previous room. Usually the mentors were very greedy, but this time they spent on good conditions for Chu Ming. Once, the brilliant Dr. Shen who told the guy that after descending from the mountain, he would not only spread their teachings, but also get to know 7 other mentors. The doctor told Chu Ming that when he was very young, each of the mentors acquired the qualities inherent in teachers and went out into the outside world. But now they all have enough experience to help Chu Ming. The doctor gave Chu Ming a talisman with which he can get to know each other with mentors. The first of them is in Jiangsu, where Chu Ming is now heading. At first, while still in college, the guy did not want to go down from Mount Kaifeng and look for someone. He was quite good there. But the doctor decided to use blackmail. He took out a small book and told the guy that he had found it in the guy's room a few days ago. Chu Ming began to worry and asked the doctor to return the book, saying that he took this book simply because he was interested in the ancient cultural traditions of Huaxia. Shen who told Chu Ming that each of the mentors is an incredible beauty, and it does not compare with the girls from various books. Upon hearing this, Chu Ming immediately asked to start packing. He intended to go there tomorrow. He really wanted to find the mentor sisters faster. Back then, the guy could not have imagined what the meeting with Shen Hu would turn out to be. And now he is already sitting on the train and heading to meet the first mentor. Chu Ming wondered how much money his teacher had left him for the trip. The elder explained that he would give expenses only for the first time. The rest of the expenses for the guy would be borne by the first of the 7 sisters of the mentors. Opening the envelope, the guy was pleasantly shocked because he found 500 yuan in it. And being on the mountain, he did not spend 20 a month. He was sure that this amount would be enough for him for several years ahead. Chu Ming expected a luxurious life. Suddenly, he heard a woman's voice approaching his compartment and immediately realized that it was most likely his traveling companion. A moment later, a charming girl came into the compartment and informed the guy that they would be traveling together for the next day. Chu Ming was amazed by the beauty of the girl. He could not have thought that in the outside world all girls are so beautiful. He felt uncomfortable for a second at the thought of them being alone together. Now the guy understood what the very love affair he had read about on the forums meant. The girl went out for a while and returned with an elderly man. She immediately said that he was her grandfather. Chu Ming realized that this was a bummer of all his romantic plans. The old man greeted the guy respectfully. Chu Ming immediately heard that the man's voice was very hoarse and suggested that he might have problems inside his chest. The guy decided to ask the old man if he had felt any pain in his heart over the past few years. The girl, hearing this for some reason, flared up, asking the fellow traveler not to talk nonsense, because in her opinion everything should be fine with her grandfather. The old man looked at the guy with the idea that he was another sycophant, thinking that the youth had completely changed over time and had no morals, thinking only about the benefits of connections. Chu Ming fell on the bed with the thought that he was thinking too much. He understood that the man's voice was coming from his chest and suggested that the old man might have congenital heart failure, most likely also acquired genetically. Meanwhile, the fellow travelers were packing in the room. The girl decided to take the upper bunk and started climbing. The guy suggested that the girl might also have health problems, but looked at the angle in which he saw the girl from the bottom shelf. Suddenly, the girl's grandfather started clutching at his heart and coughing violently. The girl was scared and asked if she needed to bring water to her grandfather. He only grunted that he began to suffocate. The girl put her grandfather on the lower bunk and asked him to lie down quietly while she tried to solve the problem. The girl ran out into the corridor and asked the conductor to bring a doctor. The conductor was slightly taken aback, but the girl asked her not to delay and go for a doctor as soon as possible. The conductor ran away, warning that she would now announce the information over the loudspeaker, in the hope that there would definitely be a doctor among the passengers. The girl approached her grandfather and tried to support him, saying that help was on the way. Chu Ming watched what was happening, realizing that if he did as his mentor, the great doctor, had taught him, he would be able to cure this old man. But he remembered that his mentor had asked him not to help everyone. The guy recalled a huge number of ads on stations where various cases were condemned. The man who saved a girl in a short skirt from falling from a roof was condemned by society because he saved her without paying attention to the personal boundaries of the girl. And there were extremely many similar cases. After that, Chu Ming did not know whether he should help people. But the guy understood that his mentors taught him to be responsive. He approached the girl and tried to tell her that he could help. But the conductor and a middle-aged man came into the compartment. The woman said that she had brought a doctor. The girl immediately jumped up from her grandfather's bed and answered the doctor's question that her grandfather had a congenital heart defect, but he had not manifested himself before this case. Chu Ming was surprised that the doctor asked so directly, instead of examining the patient first. The doctor twitched his nose, saying that there were no medical instruments on the train and he would not be able to make a diagnosis based only on the words of the girl. He offered to see the patient when they reached the nearest station. The girl was indignant. She did not know where to take her grandfather to be examined. The doctor assured that without diagnosis he would not be able to determine the diagnosis of the patient, because only with the latest equipment it is possible to determine the patient's condition and his further treatment. The girl was indignant. She understood that there was no such equipment on the train. The doctor rudely replied to the girl that he had no authority to diagnose the patient without preliminary examinations, because he was the deputy director of the Jangu Municipal Hospital, and not a charlatan. Chu Ming watched the altercation from the side and was outraged that the man was offering an examination, as if he had not intended to help the patient from the very beginning. Meanwhile, Grandpa was coughing violently. Chu Ming understood that the symptoms were getting worse and at this rate everything could end very badly. The girl begged the doctor to do at least something to save her grandfather, but the man apologized, saying that he could not help and left the compartment. The doctor came out of the compartment and collided with the conductor, and she immediately told him that the patient was the same grandfather Yu, from whom everything in Jiangsu was shaking. The doctor was scared and asked the conductor if it was true, but the woman was sure because she had previously seen the names of passengers on the tickets. The conductor insisted that this was a great moment for the deputy to show his skills in medical practice. The man came back and replied to the woman that if he managed to occupy a high position, he would reward the conductor in full. The doctor informed the girl that she urgently needed to do a heart massage for the old man, and he immediately went to the patient. The girl was surprised that Ratcha's attitude had changed so dramatically. Chu Ming understood that the main goal when working with a patient with sudden cardiac arrest was to regain the ability to breathe. But this was not the case. The guy intervened and asked the doctor to stop doing heart massage, because if he continues, the man may not be able to stand it, because this is not cardiac arrest, but ordinary exhaustion. The doctor was embarrassed, saying that the old man had lost consciousness and needed to wake him up somehow, and in the end, the doctor was annoyed that someone was questioning his treatment methods. Chu Ming replied that he was a follower of traditional Chinese medicine and knew what it was about. The doctor just laughed, because the treatment, which in his opinion is misleading and based only on a placebo, cannot have any followers. The doctor was sure that the outdated method would not be able to determine the diagnosis more accurately than he himself with 10 years of experience. Chu Ming assured that if the doctor continued to massage the heart, the old man's chest would not withstand the pressure, and the ribs would simply break, which would cause damage to both the heart and lungs, and this would lead to a terrible outcome. The doctor understood that the guy's words were quite reasonable, but now he did not know what to do. For a second, the doctor looked at the old man and wondered how important he was to save him, but thought that it would be possible to at least try. The doctor contacted Ms. Yu and informed her that he would try to find a way to save her grandfather. The doctor understood that even if the grandfather just woke up for a while, the girl would already be grateful. The girl was surprised to hear her name and immediately realized that most likely the conductor had informed him about everything. But Chu Ming did not know either her or her grandfather and was able to describe the old man's illness without any examinations and tools. The girl asked the doctor to slow down a little and approach Chu Ming. The doctor was outraged. He did not understand why the girl doubted help if her grandfather's life was at stake. The girl asked Chu Ming if he could really help her grandfather. The guy explained that he would try to do it, but if they did it the way the doctor suggested, then Grandpa would wake up, but would not last more than 3 days. The guy incited the doctor with this and he proudly remained silent. The girl was afraid that her grandfather could not be saved. Chu Ming explained that it was quite possible to help him because his grandfather was born with heart failure and, due to age, due to a decline in vitality, his heart is now inflamed. Chu Ming was sure that one session of acupuncture would help grandfather and his blood flow would immediately return to normal. Chu Ming assured that after this procedure, the disease would not return for 3 months. The doctor began to resent that the girl was about to believe the charlatan. The conductor also intervened in the conversation and began to say that it was better to trust the deputy director of the municipal hospital than the first person she met. The girl flared up, saying that the doctor changed his arrogance to deference only after the conductor told him about the status of the girl and her grandfather. She is not a fool and understands basic things, especially since before that the doctor convinced the girl that without equipment she would not be able to conduct an examination and make a diagnosis. The conductor and the doctor tried to convince the girl, but everything was in vain. The girl begged Chu Ming to help her grandfather. Chu Ming was surprised by the girl. She looked younger than 20, but she was not naive. She understood that she had revealed her status and was still not afraid to ask for help. Chu Ming admired the girl. She was very charming externally, but at the same time with an extraordinary inner world. He remembered that the mentor called such girls cuties in contrast. Chu Ming decided to finally get to work. The doctor was still trying to intervene and said that the guy didn't look more than 20 years old, and the girl wasn't afraid to listen to him. The conductor also intervened, saying that he was a complete stranger and wanted to take on such a big responsibility. The girl stood next to Chu Ming, ignoring all the indignation, only asking the guy if he knew exactly what to do. Chu Ming took out a small case and said that he was a master of acupuncture because while in the mountains, he often trained on wild boars. He even remembers that there was a difficult case with a wild boar giving birth, and the guy managed to bring her back to life. The girl and the guide were slightly surprised to hear about the boar giving birth. The conductor began to convince the girl again to refuse the help of a traditional medicine doctor, under the pretext that he was talking nonsense. The doctor chuckled that Chu Ming had equated people to pigs, and was now trying to steal the doctor's triumph by curing the old man. However, although he did not have great hopes that the guy would contribute to the recovery of Grandpa Yu, but he was interested to see what would happen, because if anything happened, the Yu family would not spare the young man. Chu Ming asked everyone to wait a bit. He gradually unbuttoned his grandfather's shirt and informed them that this method of acupuncture was very painful. The guy opened his case with needles and took out one of them, immediately pointing one at the upper right side of the old man's chest. Time after time, there were more and more needles in the man's chest. And finally the guy stuck the last one. The old man immediately woke up and coughed up blood. Everyone present was immediately scared when they saw this. The doctor behind Chu Ming laughed at the methods of traditional medicine, saying that after such a thing, Mr. Yu might not recover at all since he coughed with such consequences. Chu Ming only said that the doctor needed to have a little more patience. The doctor regarded this as an impertinence on the part of Chu Ming. But looking at the grandfather, the doctor was surprised that he really came to his senses. Chu Ming warned his grandfather that he had just had blood, but there were no more blockages in the vessels and his condition should return to normal a little later. The guy said that next time Grandpa should be more careful and carry medicines with him. Grandpa thanked Chu Ming for his help. The old man turned around and noticed the conductor with the doctor, immediately asked who they were. The conductor said that she had brought a doctor to Grandpa Yu. The doctor introduced himself as Jiang Bagwang and said that he was the deputy chief physician of Jiangju Municipal Hospital. The man was surprised to hear that the conductor brought a doctor, but in the end it was not the doctor who helped him, but a young man who was in the compartment next door. The conductor and the doctor tried to justify themselves, but they did it badly. The doctor suggested that the grandfather go to their hospital for further treatment, saying that the hospital would choose the best room and everything would be in the best light. The elder asked Chu Ming if he really should go to the hospital, The doctor got angry that the old man was asking such questions right in front of a qualified doctor. Chu Ming told his grandfather that there was no point in going to the hospital at all. The old man believed his healer and told the doctor that he would not go to the hospital. The conductor pulled Zhang Bagwang by the sleeve, asking that it was time for them to leave. The man rudely replied to the employee that she could go, and the doctor himself still wanted to find out something. The man was outraged that success was right in front of his nose, but because of some upstart young man, everything did not go according to plan, and such things are not forgotten. After a while, Chu Ming came back to his grandfather and said that it was time to put away the needles. He reassured the man that he could not worry, because it would be quick and painless. The man nodded his head approvingly, but the old man didn't even have time to blink, as all the needles were already taken out and the guy was putting them in his case. The grandfather turned to his granddaughter and asked her to give the young man a business card. The man wanted to thank Chu Ming and take him to a delicious meal. The girl handed Chu Ming a business card and thanked him for his help. The guy was embarrassed, saying that it was not worth praising him so much, because the guy was taught to be responsive. Chu Ming said that as soon as they get to Jiangsu, he invites the Yu family somewhere, he will pay the bill himself. The guy said that he had heard about the outside world, that there was a place somewhere that served delicious fried chicken and suggested that the man and the girl go there. The girl laughed, saying that her grandfather was already too old for the children's menu. Suddenly, a doctor attacked Chu Ming and began shouting for him to answer where he had a doctor's degree, because if he did not provide it, the man was determined to call the police. He was outraged that pseudo-doctors were practicing medicine without a license, and if a homeless person was injured, then no one could be responsible for it. Chu Ming coldly replied to the man so that he would not wave his arms, because the police would be able to get to him. The doctor was outraged that Chu Ming continued to be impertinent, and had already dialed the police number, threatening that treating without a license was punishable by imprisonment of up to 10 years. Suddenly the train stopped abruptly and everyone in the compartment staggered, barely keeping their balance. The driver's announcement was heard that this was an emergency situation and it was necessary to remain calm and not leave your dreams. The guys didn't understand what had happened. Suddenly, the police came into the compartment, saying that this was a routine inspection. The doctor was happy and immediately introduced himself who he was. He pointed to Chu Ming and said that he was a doctor who worked without a license. But the police only heard about Zhang Bagwang and realized that they were looking for him. The doctor hung in shock for a while. He did not understand why the guardians of the law were interested in him. He was immediately handcuffed and told that Zhang Bagwang was suspected of cooperating with pharmaceutical companies that supply low-quality drugs, and these drugs massively cause side effects in patients, including even blindness. The doctor resisted and said that the police had made a mistake, because the man had done nothing. Chu Ming grinned. He was not surprised by this outcome of events, because everything was just coming to this. The police took Zhang Bagwang away, saying that they would sort everything out to the end already at the department. Chu Ming was pleasantly surprised that the art of contemplating Kai, which his mentors had taught him, had not failed. The girl just remembered that earlier Chu Ming had already talked about the arrest of Zhang Bagwang. The guy was embarrassed and replied that he had only guessed about it, but he understood that each technique of the 7 masters has magical power, so it's better not to spread it once again. After all, Chu Ming still had an errand. The girl sat down next to him and asked if the guy could predict what would happen to her in the future if he guessed about Zhang Bagwang's arrest. The old man assessed Chu Ming from the outside and understood that the guy was full of secrets. He was not arrogant and did not commit rash acts. He considered it a real talent. Chu Ming, on the other hand, felt a pleasant fragrance from the girl and realized that the fragrance from her was completely different from the wild boars he had previously dealt with. The guy recalled how the elder found a book with an online message in Chu Ming's room and realized that then he had not deceived him, saying that the girl's life was even more beautiful. The guy told the girl that he had not looked into the distant future, but he could advise her to beware of people in green clothes. The girl scoffed that he couldn't predict, but nevertheless warned her. The girl said that people practicing Chinese folk medicine can see human destiny, and asked Chu Ming if this was true. She wished he would tell her everything as soon as possible. Chu Ming insisted that he really could not look into the distant future and see the fate of the girl. In fact, the guy was confused by how close the girl was sitting to him. The description in the book could not compare with what he felt now. Grandpa asked Lin Lin not to be so annoying and asked the guy if there was a way to cure the elder's illness, because if the attacks continued, the man was worried that his old body might simply not stand up. Chu Ming answered in the affirmative. He said that according to his prescription for taking medicines, it is possible to get rid of Grandpa Yu's illness within 3 months. The man was pleasantly surprised and shocked. Chu Ming turned away and reached into his backpack. The girl was surprised that the guy climbed back in there. Chu Ming took out a small piece of paper and a calligraphy brush, saying that he would now write a prescription for Grandpa Yu. The girl was surprised to see the brush. In their time there are very few people who use it. She asked if it was convenient to write in this way and only then noticed that there was already a table for calligraphy near the guy's feet. The guy explained that his senior mentor had told him that the brush was a legacy of Confucian teaching, but pens and pencils could really be more convenient. However, Chu Ming understood that someone still had to continue to write with such a brush, otherwise the tradition would die out. If traditions were neglected, then it would not be possible to restore them. Lin understood that Chu Ming was a bit strange in places and his character was extraordinary, but she had never met such guys in the city. After a while, the guy handed Grandpa Yu a prescription and explained that since the disease is hereditary, his family members can also take this medicine for prevention. The grandfather was surprised and asked how the guy knew that this disease is inherited. Chu Ming asked the man not to worry and said that he had made such a conclusion, judging by the diagnosis, and told the old man that he was a very resourceful person. The mentor told Chu Ming that people in high positions work hard with their heads, and they usually have a heart aneurysm. Starting with the old man, family members must be engaged in heavy mental activity. It was the first time the old man had heard such a young man say such a thing. After all, everyone thinks that people in high positions do nothing. However, compared to others, I get tired 100 times more. The old man recalled a quote that being a captain, you always try to steer the ship and go with the flow. But if you make the slightest mistake, you can lose absolutely everything, and then you will not be able to avoid suffering. The man did not know how useful Chu Ming's recipe would be, but on behalf of the whole family thanked him. Chu Ming took Grandpa Yu's hands and wished him to always stay healthy. The man asked Lin to take his business card from the guy. The girl approached the guy and asked him to return it. The guy thought it was strange. First they give him a business card, and then they take it away, but he handed it back to the girl. Grandpa took the business card and said that the guys should add each other to the messenger for communication. The guy was extremely surprised when he heard this. The girl handed the guy her phone and said that he could scan the code. The guy got a little confused and at first did not understand what was required of him. The girl explained that he needed to scan the QR code, but the guy still did not understand what the girl was talking about and took out his clamshell phone. Lin has not seen such old phones for a long time and is surprised that it turns on at all. The guy explained that his mentor gave him this device and he uses it when he needs to read something on the internet. He explained that you can send messages, go online, and everything else. The phone had a waterproof case, which is very practical, and thanks to this treasure, all the information in the world is open to the guy. The girl said that first you need to check if the guy has the right messenger and then scan the code. She was amazed that the guy called this phone a treasure and suggested that he probably didn't have the best life if he couldn't afford something else. Chu Ming immediately said that he had nothing on his phone, because the most authoritative and richest in the territory of their mountains was the senior mentor, which meant that he needed to listen to this. There was a little wordplay here. It seemed to the guy that the girl said about authority, but it just sounded like the name of the messenger. The girl tried to explain it to him, but for a second she wondered if there were any applications with social networks on such a phone at all. Grandpa Yu asked Lin not to embarrass the young man, and in that case they would just exchange numbers with him. They quickly exchanged contacts and the girl reported that everything was successful. The girl said that as soon as they reach Jangu, she will immediately dial him and invite him to eat. The girl also said that if Chu Ming wants to eat fried chicken, then you should definitely call her. The guy understood everything and was very grateful. Grandpa Yu watched everything from the sidelines and realized that at first Chu Ming seemed to him an ordinary scoundrel, and then he could not even think that it could be so interesting with this young man, although he understood that it was too early to sign him up as a groom for Lin. Grandpa Yu understood that after all, Lin is a member of his family, and besides, the Wang family is closely watching her. If for the sake of profit the Wang family decides to marry his granddaughter, then Grandpa does not know what to do at all, so he decided to deal with problems as they come. Chu Ming noticed that the old man had a very sad face and immediately asked if something was bothering him. Grandpa Yu calmed the guy down, saying that he was just a little worried, but he was very glad that he had met Chu Ming. Chu Ming happily replied that there was no need to worry about anything, because whatever the man wished, everything would definitely come true for him. Grandpa Yu thanked the young man. Chu Ming then turned to Lin Lin and asked her to be careful, referring to the fact that she should avoid people in green clothes, otherwise there would be trouble. The girl replied that she thought this assumption of the guy was stupid, because he could just get it wrong. After a while, the driver announced that the train had arrived in Jangu and the guys got out of the car. The guy had to carry Lin Lin's suitcase in his arms, because her wheel broke off. After a while, he complained that the girl's suitcase was very heavy. The girl thanked the guy that he even agreed to this help to drag the suitcase off the platform. Grandpa Yu said that their friend Lin Lin should meet them and the guy can already go. The guy waved off, saying that the suitcase was no heavier than 2 or 3 bamboo trunks and continued to carry on. People from the outside were surprised at how strong Chu Ming was. The girl peered into the distance and distorted her friend, because she wrote that she had arrived a long time ago, but still not in place. After a while, a purple car drove up to the guys and a charming red-haired girl got out of it. Lin Lin's best friend's name was King, and she immediately asked her friend if she had kept them waiting for a long time. Lin Lin also noticed another detail, namely that Na King was wearing green clothes, and Chu Ming had warned her about this a little earlier. She turned to the guy and asked if there was any way to fix this situation. The guy only said that he could ask the girl to take off her dress, but this is very frank. Lin Lin looked at Chu Ming in surprise, not understanding if he was serious about asking King to undress. The guy explained that it was just better for her to change her dress than to undress completely. King watched the guys from the sidelines and didn't understand why Lin Lin was being so nice to a guy from the village when he usually kept all the guys at a distance. King was wondering who this guy was. She suspected that Chu Ming was just sucking up to Lin Lin and wanted to deceive her. Lin Lin came up to her friend and said that she wanted to tell her something. The friend also wanted to say something. King understood that Lin Lin was not that experienced yet and could not be allowed to be deceived by Chu Ming. King started talking about Chu Ming, but Lin Lin immediately apologized for interrupting and asked her friend to change her clothes and change her dress. The girl was taken aback, but her friend insisted and said that there were definitely a couple more beautiful outfits in the trunk of King. King didn't understand what was going on, but she agreed and asked Lin Lin to go with her. Lin Lin didn't mind. Sitting in the car while King was changing, she asked what her best friend had in common with Chu Ming. Lin Lin didn't really understand what this conversation was about at first. King was outraged that her friend was responding as if there were a crowd of people standing nearby. Looking out the car window, King noticed that Chu Ming was no longer with Grandpa Yu. Lin Lin immediately said that she met this guy on the train and was surprised that he had already gone somewhere. King joked that the guy just saw her approaching him and hid. Lin Lin's best friend asked her to be careful, because often the most inconspicuous turn out to be scammers. Lin Lin was upset that the guy left and didn't even say goodbye to her. King noticed that her best friend's face had changed and realized that it was very bad, suspecting that the girl had fallen in love with Chu Ming. The guy had already moved a little further from the station at that time and remembered the words of the senior mentor that a decent person would not spy on others, so he decided to leave while the girls were changing in the car. The navigator had already set up a route on the guy's phone. Because it was time to go about his business, the senior mentor told Chu Ming that he had left the apartment on the outskirts, away from the hustle and bustle of a busy city. The guy decided to look at the maps where exactly this place is, but a taxi driver had already driven up to him and immediately asked if he needed a ride. At that time, the navigator sent an alert that the destination was 13.5 kilometers from the current location. The taxi driver incited Chu Ming, saying that even the navigator warns of a long journey, and it will not be easy for an ignorant person to get there. The taxi driver claimed that he did not drive in a roundabout way with the payment meter turned on. He insisted that Chu Ming get in the car, but the guy refused, saying that there was no need for this. The taxi driver was surprised and asked Chu Ming if he was going to walk more than 10 kilometers. Chu Ming adjusted his backpack on his shoulders and proudly declared that such a distance was still a flower, and he could easily master it, because he had once walked much more in the mountains. The guy sat down in a running stance and after a moment rushed forward. The taxi driver looked out of the car from shock that the guy was so fast. He regarded this sight as something mystical. The guy ran very fast and almost knocked down passers-by, because he stubbornly looked at the path laid by the navigator on the phone screen. After some time, he successfully reached the outskirts of the city in the backwoods, and the navigator immediately notified the guy that he had arrived at his destination, namely the Hongshan residential complex. The navigator considered the guy's fast running for speeding in a car and asked the guy not to forget to pay a fine for it. Stopping near one of the buildings, the guy read the sign and really saw the inscription that he had arrived at the Hongshan residential complex. Old men were sitting next to the house and told the guy the same thing, although half of the words on the signs were erased. The guy thanked the old men and went on. The man was slightly surprised that another young man appeared in the area. Grandma suggested that the guy might have come here to work. However, my grandfather did not appreciate this idea, because you need to get to the center for 2 hours by bus. The elder even laughed that the young people are now more persistent than he was in his younger years. After a while, the guy entered the building in which the elder found him an apartment with free Wi-Fi, with installed electricity and water meters. The mentor said that the internet speed in this apartment can reach 2 megabytes per second. Climbing the stairs, the guy remembered the words of his teacher that they have the maximum communication speed in the mountains and it's only 200 kilobytes. Even to watch a movie you need to try very hard, because there is sound, but the picture does not move. Chu Ming couldn't even imagine how fast the internet could be in this apartment and he was very interested. Finally, the guy got to the coveted apartment with the right number. The mentor said that the apartment number was 6-2. The guy knocked on the door and immediately asked to explain what the counters his mentor was talking about meant. An attractive woman came out from behind the door and Chu Ming immediately said that he had come here about renting an apartment. The girl introduced herself as Qin Yan and informed the guy that she was his landlord. She warned that the apartment was small and there was Chu Ming's bedroom on the side. The girl warned that the guy can use the living room and kitchen at any time, but forbade drying things on the terrace, because on Mondays, Wednesdays, and Fridays he will have a place for this. The guy looked at the clothes dryer and was slightly taken aback when he noticed Qin Yan's underwear. The girl immediately menacingly asked what he was staring at and he apologized sheepishly, saying that he would go to his room. Entering his bedroom, the first thing the guy felt was a pleasant aroma, and then his eye fell on the bed, on which Qin Yan's clothing items were scattered. The girl came up from behind and said that this room was hers. The guy apologized and immediately ran out of Qin Yan's room. Entering his room, he abruptly slammed the door. The girl understood that she had come across a rustic and withdrawn tenant, but she generally liked the look, because it's not every day you can see such a neat boy. A second later, the guy opened the door a crack and asked the hostess for the Wi-Fi password. The girl dictated the numbers to him and an awkward silence hung between them. The guy slammed the door again, thanking Qin Yu in advance. She thought Chu Ming was cute when he was embarrassed and finally put out her cigarette, going into her room. However, Qin Yu understood that a guy like Chu Ming would never be able to be with her. Chu Ming happily fell on the bed, because he managed to get settled in a new city for him. He remembered all the people he had met and realized that the girls in the city were really much more beautiful than in the books. Putting his hand in his pocket, the guy took up a small sign and wondered what he wanted to know about the eldest seventh sister. He decided to use the art of fortune telling to predict this. The guy started a little witchcraft and saw a lot of money in his imagination. He immediately assumed that the seventh sister must be a business person. But Chu Ming didn't understand why he couldn't see his sister more clearly, and when he tried to bend his finger, it hurt him a lot. The guy realized that the seven masters had actually joined forces to hide the life force of the seventh elder sister. If there was only one gap, then the guy would have seen more specific information about the seventh elder sister. Chu Ming decided to look for the seventh sister on the internet, because if she is a business person, then you can definitely find some tips on the web. A moment later, the guy was flipping through various web pages and realized that all the people he came across were very old and behaved incorrectly. Chu Ming realized that he could not use a shortcut to find information, so he would have to think of another way. He was about to fall asleep, but his stomach rumbled and he realized that it was time to eat. Going out into the kitchen, the guy was surprised that the apartment was so quiet, and assumed that Qin Yan had just left. He knew that living with a girl would be very awkward, so he would have to be more careful. When he went to the stove, he was surprised that it was gas. He saw how to use it only when he watched it on the phone. He was worried about trying to set it on fire for the first time in practice and was not sure that he would be able to do it at all. But everything worked out and the guy was very happy about it. He began an active cooking process, slicing vegetables and boiling noodles. He knew about the existence of 4 steps in cooking noodles. In the mountains, he was a master of cooking noodles. After a while, the dish was ready. The guy was glad that the dish turned out to be so fragrant and was ready to take his first meal not in the mountains. The guy was still confused by the silence of the house during the meal. He understood that even in the mountains it was never so quiet. and Chu Ming had already managed to miss his mentors a little, with whom they ate together on Mount Kaifeng. Suddenly, someone started opening the front door with a key, and the guy immediately assumed that the hostess had just returned. But two girls came into the apartment and the hostess was clearly not in the best condition. Her companion, seeing Chu Ming, immediately asked what he was doing in Qin Yan's apartment. The guy wanted to explain himself, but the hostess's friend threw her on the floor and left, saying that Qin Yan's behavior had nothing to do with her. For some reason, Chu Ming thought that he seemed like a bad person for the hostess's friend, which is why she left so quickly. The guy was looking at the hostess, who was sprawled on the floor, and was thinking of taking her to the bed, but he felt a very pungent smell of wine. But when he got closer to the girl, Chu Ming lifted her up and smelled such a smell that it was as if someone had given the hostess something worse than alcohol. The guy was outraged that someone treated his mistress so cruelly, leaving her terribly intoxicated. He understood that she was under the influence of a very strong medicine. The girl started to cough and suddenly she spat out the pills that she had been given earlier. The guy immediately realized that this was exactly what had intoxicated her. He picked up one pill from the floor and was shocked that she was given such a large dose. The girl, barely breathing, asked the guy to call an ambulance as soon as possible, because those who did this to her did it intentionally. The guy understood that it was too late to call an ambulance, because the medicine that the hostess took exceeded the limited dose, which led to the dispersion of Kai in the kidneys. The girl felt very bad, and the guy understood that at this rate she would live no longer than 10 minutes, and he did not know what to do. The girl cried tearfully that she could not move and she was very scared of what was happening. Qin Yan blamed herself for this, because if she had known about it earlier, she would not have done so. But the guys at the bar handed her a drink, saying that if she didn't drink it, the bar would be closed to her. If she had known that there was poison in that glass, then she would have desperately fought against it and refused the guys. She did not understand why this was happening to her, because she just wants to live well. And now she only gets pain and suffering. She understood that it was like this now, it was like this before. As a child, she had always been a tool for exchanging money between her mother and father. At some point when her father died, Qin Yan lost value in the eyes of her own mother. She recalled how she left her parents' house saying that she wanted to live as she pleased. Chu Ming looked at the hostess and understood that a person who committed a crime should not be a kind person. The guy understood that salvation could bring a lot of trouble, but the great master once taught him this, and the doctors are just the same kind, so Chu Ming decided to help. The guy touched Qin Yan's wrist and asked her not to panic, saying that he would heal and save her. The girl did not understand what her tenant was talking about. Chu Ming knew that the bullets were still relatively clean and he only needed to get the poison out of the vessels, and then everything would be fine. He apologized to the girl and pulled her blouse up. She took this as an unfriendly attitude and understood that all men are really the same. But the guy took out his case with needles and said that his most important task now is to remove toxins from the body. So he decided to use something else and took out a scalpel. He asked the girl to wait a bit and carefully brought the scalpel to her stomach. She screamed in pain, but the guy only needed a small incision, which he immediately sewed up when enough blood came out. He informed Qin Yan that she was fine now and only needed to rest for a few days. The girl got up from the floor and looked at her stomach in shock. The guy picked up the girl in his arms and explained that he had done a simple little operation to remove the source of the toxin. After all, as long as the toxin does not get into the heart, it will be easy to survive. Qin Yan was surprised that Chu Ming turned out to be such a good person. He brought the girl to the sofa in the living room and asked her to rest while he tidied up the room. Suddenly, someone started knocking on the front door again and shouting that Brother Hao had come to see the girl. The girl was afraid that it could be her annoying ex again and was shocked that he dared to come. Chu Ming asked the girl if she wanted him to open the door himself. He told her that her friend had brought her here. The hostess pulled the guy back, insulting all those who could come. She understood that those who had harmed her had come and she did not want to see them. The girl earned her living by running a bar not far from here, and today, as usual, she went to open the doors and start the work of the bar. But today, Zhang Qian brought a notorious villain nearby to her bar. The girl recognized Hao's brother and was glad to see him. He immediately asked for a glass of the strongest drink available at the bar. Zhang Qian explained to her friend that this is a very big customer, and it is better to serve the best alcohol as soon as possible. Although this guy had a bad reputation, he opened the door to doing business, and at first Qin Yan didn't think anything of it. She poured the guy a drink and Jang Kyan turned to her friend with some suggestion that she wanted to discuss. Jang Kyan said that there is an option to make money quickly, and just the same brother Hao said that tonight he wants to spend the night together. The price was absolutely acceptable and Qin Yan's friend only hoped that she would agree. The girl immediately stated that she only sells alcohol in her bar, not her body. Jang Kyan was mentally outraged from this, thinking that her friend had put too much greatness on her fragile shoulders. Hao watched the girls from the side and realized that he would have to do these useless things himself. He immediately took out one of the pills and realized that only one pill of this medicine could drive even a cow crazy. And here was a fragile girl. He threw 2 pills into her glass, realizing that this dose would be enough for a woman and she would have to turn into a juicer. Hao personally approached Qin Yan and said that she should know about the consequences of the confrontation with Hao. But he assured the girl that he was kind today and handed her a glass, offering to drink the contents and forget everything that had happened before. The girl was given a condition that if she did not drink a drink, the bar would be closed today. Qin Yan was outraged by Hao's outburst, because she treats him well, and he allows himself to do this. However, the girl agreed and took the glass from the man's hands. She drank the contents of the glass that contained the poison. The hostess explained to Chu Ming that she usually has a good relationship with Jang Kyan, and sometimes she lets her come to Bra to earn money. Qin Yan considered her her best friend, but she did not think that she would be inspired with this idea. The girl was indignant for a second at Chu Ming, who listened to her with interest and ate a piece of watermelon in both cheeks. The guy explained that he took a watermelon in the refrigerator and asked Qin Yan if he should open the door for him or just call the police. Qin Yan asked to open the door because she wanted to see how bad these guys were. She asked Chu Ming to walk with her because she has severe weakness in her legs. The guy gently hugged Qin Yan, helping her walk to the door. Finally, they opened the door and Hao immediately began to complain that it took too long to open the door. Qin Yan began to resent Hao, saying that he still had the audacity to come to her house after what he had done. Jang Kyan started pointing her finger at Chu Ming and protesting that he had stolen things from her best friend's house, and for some reason Qin Yan was still with him. Chu Ming got angry and asked the girl what exactly he had stolen, because if the girl did not provide proof, she would be responsible. The guy understood that bad people are always the first to file a complaint, and this is shameless. Jang Kyan asked to let her friend go and called the girl to her, saying that they would help her. Qin Yan laughed, saying that Chu Ming was her boyfriend and she had already told him that Hao and Jang Kyan had put medicine in her wine and the police should arrive very soon. The hostess's best friend balked and said that they definitely did not put the medicine in her drink. Hao watched Qin Yan and was surprised that after such a dose, the girl was still on her feet. Qin Yan asked Chu Ming to do something to get the two of them to leave. The guy asked if they were exactly the ones who had harmed her, and the girl answered in the affirmative. The guy understood that these were bad people and he would help the girl teach them a lesson. Chu Ming extended his hand to Hao and informed him that he was Qin Yan's boyfriend. The girl was slightly embarrassed, because these people were trying to hurt her and the guy was being nice to them. Hao shook the guy's hand and grinned that the young man had managed to make a really good deal. Chu Ming said that his girlfriend had indeed been poisoned by someone with medicine, and they had already found out who had done it. The guy thanked Hao for coming. Hao was completely confused and did not understand what Chu Ming meant. The guy thanked the guys for bringing the girl back home. Jang Kyan did not understand when her friend had a boyfriend, but this young man seemed to her nothing more than garbage who could only smile. Chu Ming said that there is video surveillance in the bar and they will find out everything when they check the cameras. Chu Ming was already more strict about saying that when he finds out who did this, he will give all the information to the police and let them deal with it. Hao realized that he had completely forgotten about the video surveillance in the bar and knew that he needed to get rid of the cameras somehow. Hao abruptly turned around and informed him that it was time for him to go because he had unfinished business. Jang Kyan asked Hao to wait for her, but Hao called out to Chu Ming and asked him to tell all that he was hiding. Chu Ming joked that men cannot rely only on their lower body to think after all, because it may be out of order, and Hao himself does not realize this. Hao flared up and replied that Chu Ming had better watch his lower body. Hao understood that the couple was making fun of him, but he was sure that when he destroyed the video cameras and returned, he would deal with them. When the time came, Hao was sure that he would make the guy's life already deaf. Chu Ming took the hostess away and asked her if she wanted him to return the camera footage before Hao got to them. Qin Yan understood that it was useless because Hao is very strong in this area, and for this crime he will be released in a few months at most. The girl still wanted to live in this apartment, but she understood that if she offended Hao, then it would be over. Then Chu Ming decided to take the hostess to the room first and remembered that she had not eaten yet in the evening. He told her that he could cook noodles and invited her to try it. The girl was glad of this. She had not eaten noodles cooked by someone else for a long time. The girl was still slightly drunk because there was a lot of alcohol that she was treated to. Chu Ming asked the girl not to laugh too much because the wound on her stomach is still very fresh. Meanwhile, Hao found the memory card from the CCTV cameras and broke it. He understood that now no one would be able to prove anything, and recovery was impossible. Jan Qian poked the guy with her foot and asked him not to worry about this situation, because she would help him get rid of his anger later in the evening. Hao began to flirt with the girl, saying that she was in very big trouble because he was very angry. A couple of seconds later, Hao fell onto the bed completely exhausted and Jan Qian did not understand at all what was happening to him. The guy himself did not understand what was happening to him because yesterday everything was fine with him. Then Hao remembered Chu Ming's words and that men can't rely on their lower body alone to think. Hao immediately assumed that it was Chu Ming who was very angry at him. Meanwhile, Qin Yan was helping herself to noodles cooked by Chu Ming and was amazed by the wonderful aroma of the dish. Chu Ming was interested in the taste of the resulting dish, and the girl replied that she had not eaten such delicious noodles for a long time. The guy was surprised and asked if she had someone at home who could cook for her and, slightly hanging in silence, the girl replied that she no longer had a family. She explained that her father passed away very early, and her mother ran away after her father's death, so Qin Yan grew up in an orphanage. Chu Ming is also an orphan, but he did not understand in what sense the girl has an escape from home. The girl said that her mother married her father only for money and gave birth to Qin Yan only to get more of her father's possessions. And later, Qin Yan's parents divorced and her mother actually took a large amount of money from her father, as well as the house and car on alimony. But the mother gave the girl to an orphanage when she was only 3 years old and took all her father's property to marry another man. Chu Ming was surprised to hear this story. He understood that the girl was much more unhappy than he was, because at least Chu Ming had teachers. The girl immediately asked the guy not to feel sorry for her, because this house and her bar were built only for her and she moves herself step by step. She doesn't rely on anyone and lives very well. The girl was already sleepy and she fell asleep saying that she was independent and strong. Chu Ming understood that although the toxins in Qin Yan's body had already subsided, she was still experiencing an irreversible feeling of fatigue due to the blood she had just lost. The guy gently lifted the landlady in his arms. It was already time for her to go to bed. The guy was determined not to let anyone hurt Qin Yan while he was living here. But suddenly the guy noticed something strange. The girl's cheeks turned golden red, white steam appeared around her, which meant that she had the ability to heal herself, which far exceeds an ordinary person. This is called Ruyan physiology. The guy laid Qin Yan on the bed and remembered the words of the great master that it is written in ancient books that Ruyan's daughter is extremely rare in this world and she has restored her original essence, perfected her body and is a very good couple in practice. After all, with such a physique, not only it turns out to recover quickly from injuries, but such a body is also the best for double improvement. The guy recalled the words of his mentor that if he practiced double perfection with others, taking yin and supplementing yang, many skills would improve and he would be able to get double results with half as much effort. But the third master once told the guy that a fellow student is one of the most boring things that can only be in the world. According to the third master, a fellow student is always very noisy, difficult, and annoying. The third master was sure that women only affect the speed of drawing a sword. Chu Ming remembered that when he hugged Qin Yan, his heartbeat accelerated and it was just because of the influence of Ruyan's physiology. The guy thought that it was connected with another, but immediately checked himself, embarrassed, because he still had to found a sect of masters and promote the teachings. Chu Ming understood that in order to find the seventh elder sister, the most important thing was to take the first step. He left Qin Yan's room, carefully closing the door. But the girl nevertheless woke up from this and realized that the guy took her to the bedroom, but did nothing. This is the first time she has met such a boy, because in bars she meets only such men who, at the sight of Qin Yan, devour her with their eyes. The girl did not understand what was wrong with her. She understood that the meeting was obviously accidental, but she was confused that all her thoughts were connected with Chu Ming. It seemed to the girl that she was not worthy of such a pure boy as Chu Ming. The guy woke up to the voice of the hostess, who asked him if he wanted breakfast. Chu Ming was a little confused in the morning, and the girl explained that she had eaten the noodles he cooked last night, so now she wants to cook breakfast for Chu Ming. Qin Yan also said that she had prepared a surprise for the guy, so she asked him to get out of bed as soon as possible. Chu Ming wondered what kind of surprise the girl had prepared. The presentation of the breakfast from Qin Yan seemed very good to Chu Ming and he thanked the hostess. The girl was already impatient for the guy to try what she had prepared as soon as possible. He took the first bite and at first didn't notice anything special about the dish. The girl laughed and said that she did not know how to cook, and she bought everything that was on the table in a shop on the ground floor of their house. Chu Ming was slightly embarrassed, but noticed that Qin Yan was in a joking mood and seemed to have almost recovered. He understood that Ruyan's physiology was indeed worthy of its reputation. Then Chu Ming remembered what the hostess had said about the surprise and decided to ask what exactly she meant. The girl approached the guy and said that judging by his actions yesterday, she immediately realized that Chu Ming was far from the most ordinary person. Qin Yan understood that later the guy would definitely get a status in this city, so until he became famous, she would like to have time to be friends with him. And to show her sincerity of intentions, she decided to release the guy from the 6-month rent. Upon hearing this, Chu Ming was incredibly happy. He understood that the rent for 6 months is a lot of money, because the payment for 1 month is 300 yuan, and for 6 months it would be 1,800 yuan. Chu Ming had never even seen such a huge amount of money. However, Qin Yan was surprised that the guy was so happy about it. Suddenly, they started knocking on the apartment again. The guys immediately realized that it was Hao, because insults were pouring in their direction from behind the door. Chu Ming jumped up and immediately warned Qin Yan that he would figure it out on his own. He recognized Hao's voice. The hostess was scared, because they had decided and discussed everything yesterday, and now she did not understand what Hao needed from her and Chu Ming. Chu Ming turned to the girl and explained that when he shook the guy's hand yesterday, he gave him one medicine and now Hao is impotent. The guy also explained that even if he did not intervene, Hao would still come back and bother the girl. He would come to this apartment for Qin Yan's body until he achieved his goal. Qin Yan thought that the guy had given Hao the same medicine that was given to her, and Chu Ming replied in the affirmative. It was revenge for the outrageous things they had done to Qin Yan. The girl was very pleased that Chu Ming stood up for her. The guy opened the door, but not only Hao was standing behind it, but his whole gang. Hao immediately asked what Chu Ming had done to him. The guy started to resist and pretend that he did not understand what the bandit was talking about. Hao grabbed Chu Ming by the t-shirt near his neck and said that he had impotence. Chu Ming pulled the guy's hand away and said that he had no evidence of the healer's involvement in this. Chu Ming suggested that Hao might just be messing around somewhere and accidentally ruin himself, only to blame him for it later. Chu Ming said that accusing someone without evidence is also a violation of the law, otherwise Hao will ask for money, and for this Chu Ming can pull Hao for blackmail. Hao was furious. He didn't know how to prove Chu Ming's involvement in this situation, but he was sure that he was the one to blame. One of the bandits asked the head not to worry about what Chu Ming was saying and to start using brute force, because in that case he would definitely be honest. Hao considered this an excellent way out of the situation. Since Chu Ming does not confess, the bandit will beat him until he admits guilt. The bandits took off and ran towards Chu Ming. Chu Ming remembered the technique that the sixth master had taught him and warned that it should only be used at a critical moment. The girl started screaming that she would immediately call the police. Chu Ming exhaled in displeasure. He wanted to test his strength and use a unique technique, and Qin Yan just called the police. Qin Yan started shouting at Hao that he was the first to act disrespectfully towards her, so now they are just even. She told the bandit that if he left now, they would just leave the whole conflict in the past. Hao scoffed at the girl that she had just opened a bar and already considered herself an important person. He swung and said that she would always remain a loose woman anyway. Chu Ming stopped Hao's hand and used a technique that caused the bandit to fall backwards. The bandits, seeing what happened to their boss, were ready to attack Chu Ming because he dared to touch their boss. Chu Ming hit one of the bandits in the side, the next in the stomach, another in the face. Chu Ming dealt with each of Hao's bandits. Qin Yan was scared and explained to Chu Ming that Hao is a very serious person and if you contact him in a bad way, then there will be trouble. But Chu Ming didn't care about Hao's capabilities. He touched his friend, so he has to teach a lesson. Hao pressed himself against the wall and asked the guy not to approach, threatening that if his father found out about it, they would not live. Chu Ming punched Hao in the stomach and chuckled that he was still referring to his father at that age. Chu Ming understood that just beating Hao was not the most pleasant thing and he needed to give him something special. The guy remembered about the smiling pain point and now, when Hao was in pain, he laughed and smiled. Chu Ming understood that the great master's acupuncture techniques sometimes brought more relief than the sixth master's kung fu. Suddenly, Chu Ming heard Qin Yan's screech and turned around to see her in the hands of a bandit who held a gun to her head. The thug threatened and told Chu Ming to help Hao, otherwise he would shoot the girl. The bandit urged Chu Ming on because it seemed to him that the guy was not afraid of this at all. Chu Ming was in a stupor, but nevertheless took the needles out of Hao and he was released. The bandit immediately asked the boss if he was all right, but he was still trying to catch his breath. Hao understood that Chu Ming's methods were not easy, but he replied to the assistant that he was fine. He asked Chu Ming what he had done to him, because he could only laugh out loud. But his whole body felt a strange pain, as if thousands of ants were crawling over his body. Chu Ming explained that this is just a traditional acupuncture. Hao was amazed and said that he had never heard of a man like Chu Ming before and invited him to join the gang. It seemed to Chu Ming that Hao had gone crazy because he had just been beaten half to death, and he was trying to recruit Chu Ming into his gang. Hao explained that his father runs a fishing business on this street and Jangu City is built by the water, so they depend on water. This indicated that the influence of the Hao family is very great. And if Chu Ming joins Hao, he will be able to have a lot of money and a lot of women. Chu Ming resisted and said that Hao had offended his girlfriend and he should pay for it. Chu Ming remembered that the hostess introduced him exactly as her young man, so he continued to play this role. Hao chuckled that Chu Ming likes girls like Qin Yan, because she is nothing like herself. Hao said that he has a lot of girls and as long as Chu Ming will communicate with him, he will be able to choose any of them. Romantic or pure, there are so many types of girls that Chu Ming will not even be able to bear it. But Chu Ming was not in the mood and asked Hao to take his people away and not show himself in front of Qin Yan in the future. Hao was furious and said that in this case, Qin Yan would have to drink a penalty glass, since she refused the offer. The thug who was holding the girl was pushing her back into the apartment. Hao said that since Chu Ming did not agree to join the gang, he could only watch his woman suffer. Chu Ming understood that although these people were not good, they were still aware that if someone else saw their actions, it would be bad. Chu Ming was serious. He understood that someone would suffer from his actions today. Hao commanded his employees to settle the matter with Qin Yan right in front of Chu Ming's eyes. The bandits immediately began to undress and Hao warned that if Chu Ming tried to interfere, Hao would immediately kill the girl. Hao wanted Chu Ming to see with his own eyes how Qin Yan was being humiliated and there was nothing he could do about it. But Hao fell into a stupor when he saw Chu Ming laughing, as if he wasn't afraid of it at all. Chu Ming replied that he had nothing to fear. People in the open field were no faster than a bullet, but at this distance he was capable of anything and rushed off towards Qin Yan. The guy was rushing towards the bandit and immediately grabbed his hand with a pistol, shooting at the ceiling. The bandit clutched his arm in pain and received the next blow to the chest from Chu Ming. The healer asked Qin Yan to sit for a while he dealt with all the bandits. Qin Yan asked the guy to be careful. Two bandits were already flying at Chu Ming from behind. Chu Ming was grinning that they were too slow, slower than a boar on a mountain. He grabbed the bandits by the arms and twisted them, asking them to close their mouths, because they were screaming too loudly in pain. Hao did not understand how this could happen and how Chu Ming was moving at such a speed, because the guy should have a limit. And this is clearly beyond the scope of ordinary military training. Hao knew it was time to run away. The bandit didn't want to fight such a monster. He wanted to bring his father here. He definitely had to have a way to deal with it. But only Hao reached for the door and immediately realized that it was locked. Chu Ming immediately said that only Hao's foot crossed the threshold of their house, and the guy locked the front door. Chu Ming was mentally glad that this door turned out to be old, because if this lock had a fingerprint, the guy would not have known how to use it. Chu Ming approached Hao and made fun of him, because he was very brave and cool just now, and now he can't even utter a word. Hao fell to his knees and began to beg Chu Ming not to kill him, promised to do whatever Chu Ming ordered. He said that he had money at home and he would compensate for all the damage to both him and his girlfriend. Hao admitted he was wrong. Chu Ming understood that this was a very good opportunity, because he wanted Hao to never bother Qin Yan again, so it would be worth doing this to rid the girl of the bandit once and for all. Suddenly, there was a knock on the front door and they asked if Master Chu was at home. Chu Ming was taken aback, because no one should know him in Jiangzhou. He assumed that his elder seventh sister had sent someone to find Chu Ming. The guy came to the door and asked who was behind it. When he opened it, he saw a large group of people and introduced himself as Master Chu. He didn't understand who was in front of him, even with so many people. He even suggested that maybe this person was part of Hao's group. The man reached out and greeted Chu Ming. He introduced himself as Yu Chuanming and thanked Chu Ming for saving his father on the train. Chu Ming was slightly perplexed. Suddenly Hao's exclamations were heard from outside the door, who said that the second young master of the Yu family was in front of them and immediately asked why he had come here. Yu Chunming rebuked Hao, saying that he was not talking to him right now. Hao was completely at a loss about Chu Ming's personality and was surprised that the second young master of the Yu family came to him personally. And the Yu family is one of the 3 most influential families in Jiangzhou. It would not be an exaggeration to call the Yu family the local emperors of Jiangzhou. Yu Chunming asked if it was convenient for Chu Ming to talk now or if he needed some help in resolving unpleasant issues. Hao was scared. He understood that if the second young master of the Yu family acted, then even if Hao's father killed his son, he still would not dare to take revenge. If Yu Chunming is involved in this situation, then the Hao family will be completely destroyed. And then Chu Ming finally remembered and realized that Yu Chunming was a member of Grandpa Yu's family from the train. Chu Ming immediately asked if Grandpa Yu was okay now and if he was taking his medication on time. Yu Chunming said that Chu Ming's medical skills are very outstanding and Grandpa Yu is in very good condition now. Even doctors in key hospitals exclaimed that it was a miracle. Hao did not understand exactly what was going on, because he was shocked to hear that Chu Ming had saved Mr. Yu. The Yu family wanted to show their respect to Chu Ming for his righteousness, and they hoped that he would like it. The bodyguards approached Chu Ming and handed him cases with money and a gold mobile phone. Qin Yan watched this from the sidelines and suggested that Chu Ming might be some kind of big shot, which is why he has such special treatment from the Yu family. But she remembered how in the morning she announced that she would give up the rent in the amount of 1,800 yuan and the boy was very happy. She assumed that Chu Ming's reaction was a lie and he was only pretending to please Qin Yan. The girl was embarrassed at the thought that the guy was trying to make her happy and thought that it might be because of his interest in her. Chu Ming looked at the cases of wealth and was shocked to see it. He thought that if he took it all to the mountains, the old people's eyes would pop out of shock. But then Chu Ming remembered the words of the military genius Chu Yuelao, who said that at the foot of the mountain there are 2 things that are best left untouched and these are easily earned money and women. Then Chu Ming suggested that these are just the 2 things that men want the most. Then Chu Ming told the master that if he had 200 yuan, he would buy a new Taoist robe for the 6th master. Then the military genius got angry at Chu Ming, saying that he dared to doubt the words of the 6th master. Chu Ming howled in pain. The 6th master was afraid that he had hit the guy too hard. He put his hand on Chu Ming's shoulder and said that he always cared about his well-being. Chu Ming should remember that one should never touch what one should not touch, because these 2 things can harm a guy the most. Right now, Chu Ming clasped his hands tightly and told Yu Chunming that the doctors were kind-hearted and it was his own choice on the train to save and cure Grandpa Yu. He notified the second gentleman that he could not accept the gift. Yu was surprised that the guy did not accept the gift, but remembered that Lin had immediately told him about it. She immediately told her uncle that Chu Ming would not accept these gifts, because if Chu Ming had bad intentions towards the Yu family, he would not have secretly left the station alone. Second Uncle Yu replied to Lin that he could have done this because he simply did not know the identity of those he was helping. Yu Chunming knew where the guy lived and he couldn't let the family lose their domestic courtesy. Lin called out to her uncle and said that if the guy really did not accept the gift, then she asked him to give him one thing, saying that it was from her. The girl handed a small box to her uncle. Yu bowed in front of Chu Ming and said that if he did not accept these gifts, then no one would force him. Hao was shocked when he saw the suitcases of money, because there is at least a 7-figure sum in such a suitcase and Chu Ming refuses it. And the mobile phone offered to Chu Ming is obviously the latest version of the best phone, also with gold-plated edges. Hao understood that this was a first-class individual product that no one with money could just buy. Yu Chunming asked the assistant to bring the box that Lin handed over. Chu Ming immediately said that if the man still wanted to give some gifts, then the healer did not consider it necessary. The man said that Lin had asked him to give this box. Chu Ming immediately remembered her and was surprised that she was the one who wanted him to take this gift. Qin Yan was standing behind and when she heard Lin's name, she immediately realized that it was a woman's name. Chu Ming did not think that there could be a valuable item in this box, so he did not consider it a violation of the 6th master's instructions. Chu Ming told Yu Chunming that if the gift turned out to be too expensive, he wouldn't take it anyway. Chu Ming opened the box and gasped in surprise. Yu Chunming was surprised that Chu Ming's reaction to the contents of the box was more vivid than to the suitcase with money. The guy inside the box saw a coupon for 3 free lunches. Yu Chunming did not understand why this piece of paper was worth such delight. But there was something else at the bottom of the box, and it was a mobile phone with a note. The girl wrote that a messenger is already installed in her old mobile phone, and the most important thing in this phone is that you do not need to rent a phone card for a month. The girl also wrote that if the guy still doesn't need a phone, then he can just hand it over for recycling. Uncle Lin Lin was surprised that she was giving him a phone, but he refused even a luxury one. But he gets such an old one. Chu Ming agreed and took the phone. Chu Ming was at a loss. Chu Ming asked me to tell Lin Lin that he really liked her gifts. Chu Ming said he would, but he was a little stunned by what was happening. You couldn't guess what Mr. Chu was thinking, but he could tell for sure that he valued friendship more than material things, and such a person was really worth being friends with. Chu Ming had an idea how to thank Chu Ming for his help and asked if he wanted him to take out the trash. He hinted at how. Chu Ming turned to Hao, and he was already saying goodbye to life. He understood that if he did not cope with this now, he would be doomed. Hao fell to his knees and began to apologize to Chu Ming. He wove tales that he had a very large family that would not be able to live without him if he died. Chu Ming turned to Mr. Yu and told him not to worry about Hao. The healer would deal with him himself. Then Chu Ming decided to leave and said goodbye to Chu Ming. You understood that Master Chu seemed to be a real talent. Not only are his medical skills excellent, but they probably far exceed Mr. Chu Ming's imagination. The weapons that are lying on the ground have already been used. Chu Ming could not imagine how many people could be subdued without any injuries in such a situation. Chu Ming wasn't sure if he could take down several people in such a situation without a scratch, because it was a very powerful impact, far exceeding what Grandpa Yu had told him about. Chu Ming was amazed by Chu Ming's talent. He understood that if he did not get Chu Ming and he fell into the hands of his older brother, then Chu Ming's plans would be in jeopardy. The bandits knelt in front of Chu Ming and apologized. They thanked him for not killing them and promised that they would work through blood, sweat, and tears just to pay for the great kindness of the healer. Qin Yan watched Hao and was shocked that he had just been extremely arrogant in front of Chu Ming, and now he fell face down. Chu Ming was also amazed by the bandits' similar behavior, as if Mr. Yu was very intimidating, although in fact he looked very polite. Hao said that Mr. Yu's appearance is deceptive, and in the Jiangsu underworld he is called the Elegant Devil. It is said that all the dirty work behind the scenes of the Yu family is done by the second young master of the Yu family. Hao said that if Chu Ming did not let him go today, Hao would die. Chu Ming was surprised by Chu Ming's similar influence, but he understood that it was better to forget about it, because now Hao is completely defeated, so now he can periodically use the local snakes if he has nothing to do. Chu Ming asked if Hao could do him a favor since he had saved him, and Hao replied that he was ready to do even a few. Chu Ming said that first of all, from this moment on, bandits are not allowed to create problems in Qin Yan Bar. Hao immediately replied that no one else would dare to go to this bar and cause trouble. Secondly, Chu Ming asked for help to gather information about famous women in Jiangsu. Hao was surprised to hear this. Hao thought that Chu Ming was a bit cruel, since he was playing with his girlfriend's feelings like that. However, Hao was still upset that Qin Yan turned out to be so decent compared to Zhang Qian and his tricks didn't work. Chu Ming clarified that the search for information should be on young girls, from 21 to 25 years old. The appearance should also be outstanding. If it is too ordinary, then this is hardly what he is looking for. Hao said that he would do everything and find the necessary information for Chu Ming. After that, the healer said that Hao and his bandits could go. Hao was saying goodbye and saying that he would get down to business right now.